You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. So, here is something I think about a lot. The cultural and societal messages we often get glorify youth as the best time of our lives. And while sure, there were some really fun years in there, many of the happiest, most content women I know are postmenopausal, specifically in their 60s. And I'm not alone in that discovery. This week's guest, Caroline Paul, found the exact same thing while researching her wonderful new book, Tough Broad, From Boogie Boarding to Wing Walking, How Outdoor Adventure Improves Our Lives as We Age. As she went around the country conducting her interviews, she found active, adventurous women praising their postmenopausal lives and the enjoyment they found in the now. And she talked to a wide array of women all the way up to their 90s about their aging journeys. They all had challenges, of course. Everyone does in life. You don't get through this life unscathed. But there was also so much joy. And Caroline believes that this joy is a product of how our mindsets change with age, as well as how outdoor activity, which all of these women enjoy, really does help us age better and makes us happier. I really loved everything about this conversation. I love the book, and I hope you do too. Caroline is a great writer, and she's also the author of another book I'd recommend, the New York Times bestseller, The Gutsy Girl: Escapades for Your Life of Epic Adventure. And her TED Talk is really awesome too, To Raise Brave Girls, Encourage Adventure. It's been viewed over 2 million times. You can learn all about her, her work, and her new book, Tough Broad, at carolinepaul.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Okay, quickly, before we get to it, a couple of housekeeping things. Next week, you'll find Feisty Media is releasing a special new 4-part series called Hormonal that I am hosting along with frequent guest and reproductive endocrinologist, Dr. Carla DiGirolamo. We'll be dropping that on the Feisty Women's Performance podcast feed starting on Monday, April 15th. The series covers how hormones impact performance. So we're talking periods, hormonal contraceptives, fertility treatments, conditions like PCOS, all of that. Not so much menopause because we have this whole show here. But if you or someone you know is interested, you can tune into that, follow the Feisty Women's Performance podcast, and stay tuned for that first episode on Monday. Also, we are wrapping up our first cohort of our menopause course, Navigate Menopause, which has been amazing. We had about 450 women in there, and wow, what an incredible, incredible, supportive, engaging, just dynamite community, honestly. I got some really moving feedback that I just want to share because I'll be honest, it took a few years off my life putting together that course, and everybody has been doing such an amazing job with it, and I'm super proud of it. So this feedback was really meaningful to me. The reviews are pretty long. I'll just share some highlights. One woman says, meeting so many strong, feisty women going through this phase of life in a fun, supportive, educational setting has been simply wonderful. The historical background, the science of hormones and symptoms has been incredibly valuable, said another participant. This whole course has been so good for not feeling alone and isolated through perimenopause. I am actually struggling to put into words how much this course has helped me so far. Got another one. This course is super fantastic and rich in information and resources, and what a great community of women to uplift each other. And finally, another one says, every woman, physician, trainer, dermatologist, nutritionist, and therapist should take this course, athlete or not. It is an excellent foundation in the things everybody should know and understand. My heart is just brimming. I'm so happy. Thank you for your great feedback. It went so well. We're offering another round this spring. You can sign up and join the wait list at feistymenopause.com. The next cohort will be coming May 1st. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, that is definitely enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Okay, Caroline, I am really excited to have you on the show. I want to just say, like, I read your book on the way to a vacation, pretty much was a great airplane read across the country, across from Pennsylvania to California. And I really just love that you created this beautiful portrait of older women, and so I appreciate that. So thank you for that, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad.
And
Did you
go ahead.
finish it on the plane ride? Was it
Oh
just a,
yeah.
oh,
Oh
good.
no,
Yeah, it's a quick read. There
I
are no,
devoured it.
but it's a quick read. Good.
Yeah, no, it was great. I do have a bit of a chicken and egg question for you. Like the book, this exploration of how various outdoor activities that range in difficulty and consequence from bird watching to like literally walking on the wing of a biplane. Um, and you explain how outdoor adventure improves our lives as we age. And I'm wondering if that was your original thesis or if it was something you discovered once you started digging into what these women are doing. Because you have like a couple different themes going on in the book. It's like, oh, these things are good for you. They improve your longevity and your health span as you're talking to these women who are doing these things. And I'm like, I wonder what she set out for. I mean, was that part of your purpose is to weave the science into this? Or is it something you kind of discovered?
That's a really great question. So both. I mean, both. I had I kind of had an idea that first of all, I wanted to keep outdoor adventure into my life. I wanted it to improve our lives as we age. I kind of thought it did. I had lived a life of adventure. I was somebody who, for years, had bike packed through other countries or whitewater rafted down rivers that hadn't been explored before. This is kind of in my youth. And but I just went bikepacking through Slovenia and Croatia. So I fly experimental planes, like I surf. I have and a very active, adventurous lifestyle. And I'm 60 now, but at 55, I looked around and I saw there were no women my age on a surfboard or on a skateboard or in an experimental plane. Sometimes there were some, but hardly any. There were men my age and men older doing all that thing. So I myself started this quest because I was wondering about my own fulfilling aging. But I didn't know anything. And so I had a sense that it was good for me because I knew I was my best self in the outdoors. I felt like I was. I was present. I was, looking deeply at myself and looking at my limitations and my skills. There was just so much about the outdoors that brought out really great things in me. But I didn't know the science. And I was actually going to kind of fling myself headlong into this book. It was January 2020, and I was like, yeah, I wonder if outdoor adventure is something I can keep in my life. So I was just going to I'd already contacted women who were doing outdoor adventures, and they were older than me. But then the pandemic hit, and I couldn't speak to them personally. We were all in lockdown. So I actually was kind of forced to go deep into the science. And so the book became also something I didn't expect because I didn't know almost everything about how good outdoor adventure is. I was just running on intuition.
That's cool. That's a cool little side discovery that you made because of the turn of events there. And
Well,
it
it was
is,
cool because, well, just as an aside, it was cool because I also knew that I didn't want to do a biopic, like a bunch of bios of people. That's not, I wanted to talk thematically about fulfilling aging, but all I had was, a couple women people had told me about. So I was like, that sounds more like a magazine article. It needs to be a book. And that's when once I understood all the science and psychology, I realized, oh no, this is definitely a book. So it's not, people say I love your profiles of women, and there are profiles, but it's not a book about profiles. It's how these women exemplify fulfilling aging.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's how it reads. Along those lines of, you've mentioned that you've always lived this adventurous life. You've been a pilot, you've been a firefighter, a mountaineer. You took on some of these adventurous things in the books. Again, some more than less than others. You've always been adventurous, and I'm curious if the women that you talk to had always been so too, because it might be easy for a reader to be like, well, of course you're doing this stuff. You've always done it. You're just an adventurous person. These are
Mhm.
just adventurous people. How do you think about that?
Well, I wanted this book to be accessible to everybody. And even though the cover is a little bit intimidating, I'll just show you it. Uh, hold on. It's actually a great cover. You do not have to do this.
Is that you?
Yes.
I was wondering. That was one of my questions. It's for those who are just listening. The cover is, which we'll talk about, is Caroline standing on the wing of an airplane. We'll talk about
A
that in a second.
flying airplane.
Go ahead. Yes, yes, a flying
I
airplane.
wanted, so and I was also interested in how outdoor adventure did, exhilarate women at a later age. So it turns out that most of the women that I ended up talking to, sometimes purposely, but sometimes just like, oh, you just started this? Like I didn't know. And so many of the women started an outdoor activity later in life. And it usually happened through an inflection point of some sort. Either their doctor might have told them, hey, you got to get some exercise. Yeah, that was what happened when I interviewed Vijaya Srivastava, who learned to swim at 68. She had actually been told by her doctor that she needed to get exercise because her, numbers, her blood pressure, et cetera, wasn't good. And she had had no outdoor experience at all. And her doctor said, I prescribe you swim lessons. And so she went forth. And, I saw that over and over again. Sometimes even my own mom, who was not an outdoor person, she had just split with her boyfriend of 20 years and was pretty heartbroken and moved to a new town. So another inflection point, she picked up bicycling and it changed her life. So over and over, I saw women embracing the outdoors, but sometimes it was smaller steps. Sometimes maybe someone just asked them to go outside and they did.
Yeah, I. We're gonna talk about How did you say her name? Vijaya.
Vijaya Srivastava.
Vijaya. Yeah, I have a question about her and your mom. Those were the 2 points in the book that I actually got weepy. So I do want to go back to them. And I'm putting a pin in that. Um, I am before we get there, I want to explore a bit about the things that you have experienced yourself through this book. And you probably we have to talk about the wing walking because you're probably tired of talking about it this time.
No,
But
I'm not tired of talking about anything,
you're not
really.
tired of talking about that wing
Just
walking?
about
Okay.
me. I love talking about that. I don't really like talking about me, but I like talking about what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about that, and I also want to just circle back to I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I want to circle back to what you were talking about, that some of these women took up the sports later in life, because I think as people are listening to this conversation, I really wanted that to be a through line, that you're not hearing about these other people, you're hearing about yourself, and you're hearing about the possibilities for yourself. And I'm talking to my listeners and my audience here. I have always taken part in sports myself, but I have many friends and many listeners of the show who took up mountain biking in their 60s or took up surfing in their 60s. So, we always hear it's never too late, but honest to God, it's not. So
Yeah,
I
no,
just
it
want to
really isn't. Can I speak to the mindset that
please.
because I'm really in one of the reasons I actually did start the book is that I was very interested in the messaging that was keeping women, it seemed, from being outside because I couldn't I'd look because the men were there and the older men. And so and my own friends were disheartened about their own aging. And so I started to really realize, and I knew this, of course, because I'm a woman in America and I was 55, that there's all this toxic messaging about our own aging journey and our future. And it basically says that we are on a decline. Our bones are getting frail. Our brain is definitely hardening. We're not really, and we're boring. Frankly, we're boring. I hear this a lot. Women say, I feel invisible. What they're saying, I feel invisible to the culture. I feel invisible day to day to other people. We have been made invisible as older women. And I was interested in that because every single woman I talked to said that the 60s were the best time of their life. Every single woman who was older than me. So how could that this was a dissonance to me? Why are we getting this messaging? And of course it affects us. You want to say something? You were
No,
like,
I'm dying to say something as soon as you're done with that point, but go
okay.
ahead.
So it obviously we have this time of incredible exploration and exhilaration waiting for us, and yet many women are not taking advantage of this perfect inflection point of we're so wise, we are no longer encumbered by a lot of the things that, like our children, oh, I know, not an encumbrance, but also something, that we had to turn our attention to, often we might be retired now if we're lucky, maybe we're not, but we sort of know who we are, and we're physically still healthy, most of us. And even if we're not totally healthy, we still have the wherewithal to do things. And we are the healthiest, wealthiest, most active generation in history in this country right now. This over 50 thing. So why were they not out there? And so I started to look into mindset and the messaging that we get. So the toxic messaging is clear. I don't even hardly go into it in the book, because why do we have to talk about it? It's depressing. We all know it. And then I found some science that really kind of turned my head around, which is that the way we look at our aging predicts our aging journey. So if you have a negative view of your own aging, you will have a cardiac event earlier. You will have cognitive decline earlier. And the opposite is true. Well, let me just say, because scientists will get mad at me, you have a statistically way higher chance of getting a cardiac event earlier and cognitive decline earlier. But a positive view on your own aging means that you are healthier, happier, and you statistically live 7 years longer. And there's science that says if you have the Alzheimer's gene, that dreaded Alzheimer's gene, there is a much higher chance it will not be turned on if you have a positive view on your own aging. And this isn't woo-woo stuff. I'm sure it's this sort of virtuous cycles that start happening once you are exhilarated and go out and explore. But I was gobsmacked by this. And I was like, this is amazing science. But how do we get that positive mindset in the face of toxic messaging? Because subliminal messaging all around us is just lodges so deeply. And I had a feeling, because again, I had seen my own mother get on a bike at 62, that the answer lay in outdoor adventure. Because, and I came to this pretty late, but I'm going to say it now early, that I saw that the attributes that you access in yourself when you get outside are in direct rebuke to everything that you're told about your aging. So for instance, when I went, to the I went boogie boarding with these women in San Diego. They were between the ages of 60 and 80 mostly, but even in their 90s. And they were playing in the water. And I talked to this one woman, Lorraine Voigt, who had no outdoor experience before she joined the Wave Chasers. And again, an inflection point. It was a pandemic. She said, "Oh, okay, I'll try this. They look like they're having fun." And she got in the water and she told me, "Caroline, boogie boarding changed my life." And I was like, "What? You're saying this simple little sport where you just lie on a board and you go in the water and you laugh with your friends changed your life?" And I asked her why. And she basically, she was hard to articulate, because it is hard. It's huge. It's hard to articulate, but she kind of looked at the Pacific Ocean, the cold, vast Pacific Ocean. And she's like, "Look at me and look at the ocean." And I get tumbled by it. And I'm with my friends laughing. Like, I suddenly upended my own expectations of myself by doing this tiny little sport. And I became someone who could get in the cold water. I am strong. I am not boring. I am sharp as a tack, because I have to make all these decisions, about waves, about weather, about the person next to me. I mean, that's what outdoor adventure does. Sorry, I got really carried away because I get so
Oh,
enthusiastic about it.
that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the book. I loved that. I love boogie boarding. I think it's just underrated and so fun. But what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to do with a group of women. I mean, I was just like, if I lived there, I would be there every morning with them. I would
Yeah,
100%.
because it was kind of the epitome of play, because the very reason I was like boogie boarding, I'm a surfer. I was like, that doesn't sound like right. I mean, I had to be really schooled during this book over and over. My sort of swagger was like knocked down by these amazing women. And boogie boarding is just magical for the very reason that I was looking down on it, because it's simple. They told me, they were like, "Oh, you don't even have to have any skill. You don't even have to be fit to do this. Just come on in." And I was like, yes, that's exactly why it's so great. And they were having fun. After being with them, I looked into a lot of the science behind play. And play is really important for us as adults, as older adults. And we really downplay it, I guess I could say, because we think it's for kids and it's not. And they've done a lot of science on that. And for women, especially after the way we are girdled and judged, I think, as we come up in the world, play, just letting it loose. And they told me that Fran Dyer, who started the group, said, no one, no one's really looking at you. You don't have to worry about the phone. You can just be you. You can scream as loud as you want. And it's the ocean. So no one will even really hear you. And it is so fun. And I use the word there in that chapter, which is often not associated with women in a positive way, but they were unruly in their play. And that was so freeing for them. And it was so obvious, and you couldn't help but get caught up in it.
I love everything about that. And that's, I'm a mountain biker and I love that. That's what I love about mountain biking. You get dirty, you get muddy, you fall down. It's play. It's 100% play.
Yeah,
It's what it is.
exactly. Rough and
Um,
tumble play.
yeah, yeah. And very practically speaking, I can't this is on my mind a lot with our audience. I can't think about encouraging women in these adventurous pursuits, and I do it too, without thinking that some of them do face very real barriers about bone density and feeling fragile and not having the same acumen that they had. And that's why I am on my roof with a megaphone every day, like lift weights, get strong, do play, no, do this stuff, get your balance, because I think once you feel your strength, it can help propel you out, and those things feed off of each other. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things going on. Some women may be, there's this messaging part, which is, I think, too loud. But then there's also like an undercurrent where, especially if women haven't taking
Mhm.
care of this foundation, they might actually have it be in a weakened state. So like, let's make them strong and let's get them outdoors so it doesn't become this vicious cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh no, I was very aware that everybody begins this aging journey kind of and also experiences it differently. But the book was, I really wanted the outdoors to be accessible to everyone because I believe it is. And it's so important. It's so medicinal for us that we
Mhm.
need to get out there. But all of us can, no matter what your financial situation, your knowledge, your previous knowledge of the outdoors, your physical limitations, your race, like all these things that have previously been handicaps, the messaging wise. No, I went bird watching with Virginia Rose.
I love bird watching.
Yeah, okay, so got schooled again. I was like, bird watching. I mean, I love birds. I have birds on my arm. Like I love birds. I watch them when I surf, I fly. So but I bird watching, I didn't really think of as an adventure,
Yeah.
but it was like, it's called outdoor adventures, but really I'm going to emphasize outdoor. Like I want people to get outside. And so Virginia Rose is actually in a wheelchair. She's been in a wheelchair since she was 14. She became an avid bird watcher later in her life, and she started a organization called Birdability, which brings people with disabilities into the outdoors because she believes, again, like me, that the outdoors, but specifically bird watching, can really open up your life. She has an explorer mentality, Virginia Rose. And so when I went bird watching, I thought this is a great outdoor activity that people of various limitations can actually do. You don't have to do it. You can do it from one person I talked to, Eric, who had a very bad case of multiple sclerosis, and he was only 35 or something. He started bird watching from his kitchen window inside and then gradually migrated outside. And he told me, and he was there on our bird watching journey that day. And it was a journey. We did 6 miles. I walked, they wheeled 6 miles. It was called a bird-a-thon. I guess there's different bird things. But he told me, Caroline, birding brought me back to humans. Just this little step that he had made to watch birds, and then he started migrating outside, tiny, tiny steps. And that's what that's what this showed me is that, oh no, we can all get outside. But here's what else I learned. I came in thinking it's not really an adventure. And then I realized when I was on it, it had all the rhythms of an adventure. We were on a quest. We were anticipating the bird. There was exhilaration when we saw the bird. There was physical vitality because 6 miles, we were outside. I mean, there's vitality. We woke up before dawn to hear the dawn chorus. There was just all this engagement that was And sometimes it was boring. It was all about, and that was exactly what an adventure was, had always been for me. On a bike in the middle of the Bolivian Andes, that's every single attribute I just mentioned happened. So bird watching was an adventure, and that's what I really realized.
That's very cool. I love that because I have gotten into I make it part of other things. So I do it when I'm setting up paddleboarding or, if we just want to take like a hike somewhere, I'm like, where would be a good birding hike? But yeah, I really appreciate that.
Oh, I
Uh,
have gotten and I now I pay attention to the outdoors in a way that I didn't before, it taught me that.
and it gives you awe, which you talk about in the book. Like I find awe in everything I do because I'm so into the creatures that are out there, that I can't disentangle them anymore at this point. But I wanna touch a little bit more on the invisibility thing that you mentioned, I think about that a lot. I think society puts so much emphasis on us as women, as these young, beautiful, reproductive creatures, right? And then, like, when we're not there anymore, we sort of disappear from Hollywood in those images. And I think that, women, I don't think I know, I hear it from them in my audience. They become ashamed of their aging bodies. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to, and there can be this shrinking that can happen. But what I saw in the book and what even with Sean in the beginning, or not Sean, you with your wheel in the book, like as a
The skateboard.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a superpower that I kinda like with the invisibility that I feel like I can get away with so much more shit that I couldn't necessarily get away with before,
Yeah.
and I also you're not like the annoying male gaze and attention that, like, is sometimes intimidating and scary and, like, off-putting. I don't really miss that either. I think if you look at it and you flip the script a little bit, there's a lot of, empowerment that can come from that sort of like, go ahead."
I love that. And being underestimated, which
I
I
was just
think,
gonna say that, underestimate me,
yeah,
that's fun. Yeah.
like, yeah, because that gives you lots of room. It's like when I surf, I'm a very bad surfer, but a lot of people give me waves because they feel sorry for me. And I'm like, okay, I'll take this wave. Thank you. They're like, she came up again after that wipeout. Um, Yeah, I really feel like none of the women in this book wanted to be younger. None. And I never wanted to be younger. I think we have a gilded view of our past because our youth was tough. Come on. Okay, let me speak to myself. Being young was very hard. And I look around and it's very hard for them. Yes, we have, I guess we have these looks and this sexual currency, all the things that, of course, were valued for. But at the time, we also knew that was super shallow. Now we have a chance to go deep into ourselves. And that's the beauty of this. This is why this moment is so great. And you know this, how menopause changes us. And what I learned actually, because when I went, one of the things I knew was important as we age was novelty. So I wanted to look at people learning things. So that's why I talked to Vijaya Srivastava, who had learned to swim at a later age. And I thought, well, I better go do something too. So I decided to learn something. Now I'm a pilot, but I wanted to learn a new, very different aircraft. It's called a gyrocopter. And uh, when I went, I found an instructor who was 55 and female, which was amazing because so few women fly to begin with. Kind of, I mean, they fly fixed wing, but not a lot. But very few fly experimental planes, and very few fly these gyrocopters. And I asked her, like, I'm old, I'm 57. Am I going to be able to learn this? Because I had a view that our brains hardened like everyone else does. And she said, Caroline, and she didn't have a science background. She had just trained, she had worked with women. She had spent her life she'd worked in a rape crisis center. She had worked as a seminarian. She had she had done a lot of work. She knew life. And she said, women at this age are incredibly great students because they finally get to concentrate more on themselves. And what she was saying, which she didn't know, but I learned later after reading Brisendine's book,
The
The Upgrade,
upgrade.
is that partly chemically we've changed. Our extreme caregiving hormones, which are very outward focused, have now changed. And you probably know more about this than I do. I'd love some education on this if I say this incorrectly. But basically, in layperson's terms, this means that we are no longer forming sometimes very unhealthy outward bonds and with needy people, because that's kind of the way we've been hormonally kind of wired. And now that's changing. Now we're able to, we haven't lost our empathy, but we can focus on ourselves. And there is a happiness that certainly I have felt that I have not felt before. Like, I enjoy everything so much more. I can't even tell you. Like, I was this badass adventurer, and frankly, I wasn't always enjoying myself. Now I love every moment of every little thing I do. And this is why I'm so wide-eyed about why people aren't taking full advantage.
Boy, you just spoke every word out of my own mouth. That's how I feel too. I mean, do I miss being as fast as I used to be when I was racing semi-professionally? Sometimes,
What
but
did you
also
race? I'm sorry, I did not know
oh
you
yeah,
raced
no, mountain
bike.
bike stage
Oh, I'm
racing.
so sorry.
Oh, no, it's
I,
okay. Oh, you don't need to
ah.
know about me. But so like, yeah, I miss that badass, super fast feeling, that I had at that point. But I also, even when I was doing it, I would be in South Africa being like, I wish I could stop and look around. Like I had that very sense, when I was racing literally through all these jaw-droppingly beautiful places. And
Yeah.
now I'm still strong and I can still climb those mountains. I'm not racing up them the same way, but boy, I can appreciate them in a different way. I can have a pair of binoculars in my back pocket and stop and look at things and be, you know?
And I want to emphasize that we think we know ourselves right now, but I find that and so we have lost a little bit of that exploratory spirit about our own possibility, and we're also burdened by these messages that have been telling us about our limitations. So that the thing about going outside is not only does it upend like your sense of yourself in this incredibly subtle way. In some ways, you're not actually going out there to upend them. You just go out there because you want to have fun. And suddenly you realize, oh, this is a side of me that I didn't know I had. Like Lorraine told me when she looked at the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And then that opens up all this thing about what else can I do? And so that's, the power. So what else can I do? Novelty is so important, like I was saying. And it turns out, our brain keeps building cells, it keeps rewiring. We are so able to learn new things. And what I found is that I was a better student. I mean, I wasn't a faster student, I wasn't a smarter student per se, but I was more assiduous. I didn't care what people thought. I just wanted to learn the material. I wanted to fly gyrocopters. I didn't have to look like I knew how I was flying it, which is what happened when I was young. I just wanted to really do it. So I'd ask questions. I was, really not afraid to look dumb. Like, and again, like that's what Vijaya told me. She said, I said, was being older and not having any background in the outdoors a hindrance when you learned to swim? And she said, no, it was actually for two reasons it would help me. One, I realized this is my last shot. I'm 68. So there was this, she called it a Cinderella moment, like the clock's going to strike 12. So let's just go do this. And the second was she didn't care how she looked in a bathing suit. Like she was like, I got bulges. Oh, well, I look at the way I swim. I swim with kind of with one arm, which she kind of did. Like she couldn't get her other arm out of the water, even when I met her, but it didn't matter. She knew she wasn't going to be the best swimmer. So that's the other beauty about being this age.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And like you, a lot of the women in my community say, and I find it so encouraging and uplifting that their 60s are so happy in their 60s. And I can't imagine like the hormonal piece that we've talked about, but also just I think maybe there's that final letting go of just like fuck it. Like this is my life. I only have so many years on this planet and I'm just gonna like when, if not now, when?
Right. And I'm a particular person. I'm white, I'm privileged,
Mhm.
I'm queer, I don't have kids.
Yep.
So my personal experience is different from other people, but that's why I went and asked questions here. And so I was really when somebody says, well, my 60s is terrible, what does she know? I get it. I'm not trying to push out other people's experience. I'm just saying the possibility is there. It's not locked down that things are terrible once you age. And in
Yeah.
fact, every woman told me the opposite here.
I
And
just found it interesting because that's reflective of what I hear too. Like
mm,
even people who are not as happy in their 50s are happier in
Oh
their
no, the
60s going
50s
through it.
suck because that was perimenopause.
Tell me
Uh,
about your menopause because it's funny because going into the book, I will say, I'm like, I wonder if menopause, because it's not something that automatically, organically comes up in all these books, right? Like people don't always still like say it by name necessarily. So when I opened it, I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if she's going to talk about menopause in here. And it wasn't until, which is fine, like about 120 pages in, but then you do, you're like, and then it comes up again and
Three
again. But
times. It comes up a
yeah.
couple times, 3 times.
Yeah. But you said perimenopause caught me by surprise. You'd expected, like all of us, you're just going to lose your period. Hooray. Can you talk a bit about what your experience was and how it did, like, maybe pull the rug out from you under you a little bit for a bit?
Yeah, I had no idea what perimenopause was, frankly. I mean, I had heard kind of the word because some of my girlfriends were older than me and they'd kind of say it, but no one, frankly, I think I'm at the end of the generation that did, no one talked about it. Now I think we're out there. So thank goodness for that because I try to kind of go up as the elder and in school, some younger people, they're like, oh no, we know. Like, okay. But my twin sister who hit it, she's my identical twin sister, she hit it 6 months before me. So and she reads a ton of books about it. She loves nonfiction. She read a ton. So she was very knowledgeable. So when I was like crying all the time and then, eating at weird hours and my poor wife, who was much younger than me, was just like, what is going on? And I didn't know. And I thought I didn't know. And so my sister said, you're in perimenopause. And frankly, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go deal with this. I'm going to deal with this the way a New Englander would, which is I want to change my endocrine system if this is what's going on. And so I asked my doctor, can I see an endocrinologist? Because I want to deal with these crazy hormones. And this is not in the book, but so I went to a woman, endocrinologist. She was 30. And I told her I'm in perimenopause and these symptoms. And she said, okay, well, with menopause. And I was like, so I'm in perimenopause and these symptoms. And she kept saying menopause. And finally I said, do you know what perimenopause is? And she said, no. And I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
I was shocked. I mean, this female who's in her 30s, she was 30, I think. And she was, so I was like, okay, this is bad news. I'm so glad it's changing now. But so perimenopause was really hard on me. And I heard that from Lorraine as well, as an example. She said her 50s were also very difficult and it really hurt her confidence. And
Remind people, Lorraine was the woman
oh, she
who
was
did.
the boogie boarder
That's right.
who at 62 just decided, I think I'll go in the water. Or she was 60, I think,
Yeah.
and boogie board with these women, even though she had no outdoor background. And then maybe I thought the inflection point was a pandemic, but possibly it had been like this terrible 50s where she suffered perimenopause. She also told me, and I didn't dig further, and maybe I should have. She told me that you really have to start facing aspects of your past life and yourself before you can really move on to a happy I mean in this case 60s, which she had done that work somehow. I feel like I should have maybe pushed just to find out what
Mm.
she was exactly talking about, but I thought I did include it in the book that she said this, that you have to deal with your own stuff too, and so I don't know what that, yes, of course we all have to deal with our own stuff too. So she had also looked inside herself. Her sister had died and her sister was only 57. So there were all these inflection points, these moments that kind of blew her neural pathways, I think, open a little bit, or pushed her off autopilot. But perimenopause is one of those, which might be where we're suddenly super destabilized. But I was very interested in the way it had changed her confidence. Do you hear that a lot?
Yes, I hear that a lot. And that was sort of one of my something that I had wondered about yourself, even that how did you navigate it? I mean, did you find a place where your own confidence was shaken? And then how did you navigate that? Did you go on hormone therapy? Did that make a difference? Like, or did it just sort of resolve as it came? I mean, there's many different paths through this transition.
I did not go on. Did I? I mean, I did go on. Did I go on hormone therapy? I cannot. I am on it now
Okay.
because I did at the tail end of my perimenopause, and I think because it started to change the whole idea of whether you should or not. There was this definite sense that you should not go on hormone therapy, and I also had some alarms about my breasts, but they
Mm.
weren't they actually turned out to be nothing. But still, there was a sense that, so that did it. And then finally, I was like, you know what, not worth it. And I actually, I do think people, there are options and you should take them because it's not worth the suffering, in my opinion. So my doctor at the time was a little bit like, yeah, you can't do anything about it. And she was a woman. She was an older woman. She was older than me by probably, 15 years. And she said, you can't do anything about it. So I was influenced by that. Uh, so I am really glad to be in menopause, frankly.
So you are taking hormones now, though.
I am still, yes, yes, because
Okay.
I had really bad sleep and a really bad hot flashes. And I guess now I'm 60, so I just started a couple years ago because I wasn't sleeping well. Then I'm supposed to kind of go off. I'm happy
You
to
don't
go.
need to.
I don't
Like
need, okay.
the
Everything's so good right now. Like I just want it.
yeah,
I
the new guidelines are unless your health situation changes where you have something that would be a contraindication, that you don't there's no set like magical age where you need to go off.
Mhm. Oh, and I will say, I know what I did because my doctor was so, you can't do anything about it. It's not possible, almost, she said. I went to a naturopath because I tend to, I'd like to do something that's a little bit outside my comfort zone when I'm baffled because for me, it opens up other doors. So I went to a naturopath, not that I believed he knew what he was doing. I just thought, well, this is a possibility. Like I'm pretty open-minded about, well, let's just try. Can't hurt. And he actually helped me a ton. The things that he prescribed to me, like magnesium, and
Hmm.
I can't remember, but I had a host of things that I took every morning, and it really, really helped. So there are options besides. So I remember that I did that until very recently.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to go down all those roads because
Okay. Yeah.
that's what the show is largely about. But I
Okay.
was curious when you talked about it, like how you got yourself out of it, because I do think that um I have this sense, and I don't like have any quantitative proof of it, but I have this sense that some women do get so rocked that they do recede and don't necessarily come back out, and other women do come back out, and they come back out the other side, even stronger, and they don't care anymore and blah blah blah. But I wonder if some get stuck in there,
Well,
and
I
I worry
feel like
about that.
Lorraine was that. Lorraine could have been that until she found boogie boarding. That's what she basically
Yeah.
told me. And then once she boogie boarded, she started becoming more social. She said she tackled her fear of heights, which I say in the book. She just thought like, oh, I didn't know myself. There's more out there than I thought. And she just started
Got
exploring.
goosebumps. I get
Yeah.
goosebumps as somebody that age could be like, "Oh, look at all these things I'm discovering about myself." Like that's amazing and that's wonderful. We should all aspire, to that. Um, there are themes throughout the book of loss and adaptation, which are great, because you do talk to women who are in their 80s, I mean, there's going to be some level of loss and adaptation and evolution. I'd love for you to share. I want to cry. The story about your own mom just hit so close to home because I am like I find my greatest joy in life on wheels, so like the thought of losing that is so crushing to me.
Mhm.
Um, but I'd love you to tell a little bit about your mom's story because you had alluded to it, and it's such a wonderful tale.
Yeah, I realized that when I looked around and saw my friends disheartened about aging, that I, of course, also had, you know, taken in those messages. But there was a big part of me that was excited about aging, and it was because of my own mom, because I saw her blossom in her 40s after she left my dad and became happier. My dad's wonderful, by the way, but it wasn't right. And she found a love of her life. She was with him for 20 years and but then they split when she was in her 60s and she moved to this new town. So she was at this moment of great sadness for herself and she didn't know anybody and she decided to try bicycling. Because bicycling you do. She had a bike. It was a very old, heavy Mary Poppins bike. But she thought I'll just join this group called the Rogue Recyclers, made up of basically 60, 70, and 80-year olds. So she thought, well, I could do this. And she loved it. I mean, there was something, she had never viewed herself as an outdoors person. And so she wasn't actually trying to be an outdoors person, but suddenly she found bicycling and it gave her all these attributes I was talking about. Well, it actually hit on all the aspects of healthy aging that we need and fall away. So she had suddenly found a community and she had never been that social. But for her, bicycling, she hated small talk. She's English, by the way. She has
Mm,
this wonderful English accent, but she does not like small talk. So she said, if I don't like someone, I can just bike away. Like biking, and there was a bonding that happened because you're helping each other change flats, or how it is. There's like this natural community that forms, an energetic almost community. What actually I looked into community, it's actually what she felt was a sense of belonging, which is so
mm,
important to us as humans, but drops away as we age. So she belonged to this group. She helped, she planned rides. There was a purpose. She became physically vital, not just healthy with her heart, but she was outside in all kinds of weather and novelty. She had novelty in her life. And so she was hitting all these pillars of healthy aging just by getting on her bike. And also she loved it. So it was fun. It was not like she was trying to do this. It wasn't this. And most importantly, and what we saw was that by upending her own expectations of herself, because she didn't think of herself as someone who was strong or brave, she had this whole new sort of attitude about life. Like life got bigger.
mm.
And I saw this as her kid. And of course, I didn't give her the credit really until I started to get older and realized how much that had influenced me.
That is beautiful. And when I was reading in the book, she reaches a point. I don't want to give a spoiler, but I mean,
Oh, it's not a spoiler.
yeah, she reaches a point where she's having trouble, and you as a reader, you're like, is it just age? Like this is terrible. Like, can she not ride? But it ended up being Parkinson's, right?
At 79, she started losing. She kind of wobbled around on her bike. She
Yeah.
also had, by the way, like this incredible lung operation. They found a little thing on her lung. She's fine, but it was this brutal operation where they rip your ribs open, et cetera. And she's like, I'm going biking. I mean, she really was, that was not going to stop her. And she did. She got back on her bike, no problem. But then she was wobbling and she did attribute it to old age. She did. She said, I must be just getting old. And that was an unempowering feeling for her, and she was kind of ashamed. I remember this, and she's like, and there were options. She could have gotten a trike, but I think she felt ashamed, frankly, that she was old. But then a year later, they said, you have Parkinson's. And she told me it was a relief to know that she gave it up for that's what had happened, because there is something disempowering about just saying, like, I'm just old. So and she could have done the trike. There were options. But she instead took up walking a lot, and she still exercises, which is key to Parkinson's, but she's heartbroken. I kind of liken it to when you lose like a cherished girlfriend or boyfriend and you swear off love forever in this dramatic flourish. And that's what she did. She kind of swore off biking because she couldn't get on her two-wheeled bike.
Yeah. And I'm sympathetic to that too. I was wondering myself when I read that. I was like, would I get a trike? It's just not this, I mean, you engage in a sport one way, and then if you have to really change how you engage in it, there is a question, is that going to be satisfying? I don't identify with that, all the things. So I fully understood where she was at with that, but it was a very moving story.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, like her and Vijaya, that's the swimmer. When she finally gets across that pool, like I did have tears in my eyes because I thought like that's just it was such a beautiful story. Were there other areas? What other stories moved you particularly in the book?
I mean, I think every story. I mean, I was interested in loss in later life. So I interviewed Alona Aguayo, who had just lost her husband 8 months before. And she was actually pretty young. She was 69. He'd been 61. But I wanted to see how the outdoors helped us through grief. And so I went sea kayaking with her. Just in the marina. It was a very easy, nothing perilous, but she did this routinely 3 times a week. And what I realized was that, yes, the outdoors itself was so healing for her, but it was also all the steps she had to take to relearn how to kayak on her own. Because I was actually in her husband's sea kayak. And what she was, he used to load the kayaks, as like it is with a partner. You have an identity as a partnered person, and they do this and you do this. And so he would load the kayaks and drive them to the marina where they would kayak. And that was not something physically she felt that was comfortable for her. So she actually realized, okay, if I still want to kayak and now alone, I can't ask Louis, I'm going to build myself a kayak rack. So it was the steps she was taking to re-enter life that I saw were so, well, re-enter the life she thought that she might want, which was sea kayaking, which were empowering. So the sea kayaking was great, but it was building that kayak rack. And it was that saying to herself, I'm alone now. And I asked her, don't every time you make these moves that mean Louis no longer here to do it, doesn't that make you sad? And she goes, I always am sad, but I want a kayak. And so, and it was, she wanted to go hiking still. She wasn't sure, but she thought, do I want this to go out of my life just because I lost my partner? So she learned how to drive a 27-foot RV, which Louis used to do. But, now he was gone. So I was moved by those tiny efforts to re-embrace life through grief. And it was like the outdoors was helping her do that. But ironically, not, and it was the actual outdoors, but it was ironically all these other things she wasn't giving herself credit for, but yeah,
Those are big things that, it sounds small, but they're not,
right.
it's not to know your gear and load your gear and drive a giant vehicle to a place like those are
Right.
real barriers.
And it was like the siren call of the outside, which she knew would calm her and make her feel more herself, was also helping her in these other ways. That it was like a wonderful friend that does like cleans your laundry and you don't know, or walks your dog and you don't know when you're in a terrible place. Like that's what the outdoors did. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, there's no question. I mean, I speak like, and I think that probably most of my audience, but we do have people who spend more time in the gym or more spend in time indoors, and I always encourage people to get into the outdoors because you present a lot of the science throughout the book, but there is really good science on even like brain growth and all of these things that happen from being. There's things we don't even know about, like
Right,
negatively
because
charged
well,
ions and God knows what. You know what
oh
I'm
yeah,
saying?
no, we used to think that was baloney, like, oh, you're by the ocean. But no, they have done studies that, the chemicals from trees are
Yep.
incredibly important for your inflammatory markers. The bird song calms your brain because of, primal messages that everything is all right. And the architecture of the outdoors, the rounded shapes and the fractal nature of the outdoors actually is easy to process for our brain on a physiological level because it mirrors somehow the way our eyes are made. Like on that level, the outdoors is good for us. And anytime you are cutting down on the noise that your brain has to filter, you are doing good for your brain. They've done studies that after a walk outside, a calming walk outside, you test way better on cognitive and memory. So that's important. I want to say that the other thing that was really interesting to me that caught me by surprise was when I interviewed Cynthia Hicks and went wing walking. So if I could quickly talk about that, because,
No, because I want to make sure we talk about wing walking. So you just did a
well,
segue for me.
oh,
Go ahead.
good. Well, Cynthia, the reason I'm thinking of it is because Cynthia actually, a lot of things had to drop away from her. And she was very um, sanguine about it. She's like, I scuba dived for 30 years. So I'm so grateful that I did. And now I have cancer and I don't feel she had cancer and she's now cancer free, but during the whole process it really sapped her energy. So she gave up a lot of her outdoor activities that she had been doing all her life. But she was the person, I don't think I've ever met someone so full of gratitude. She was grateful for. So it's fitting that she was the one that taught me about awe, because what she kind of moved through the world accepting the losses in her life and wondering what was going to be next. She had the exploratory spirit. So what she would do was just simply type into the internet something fun to do here. She wanted to do something that would enliven her. And she came upon wing walking. And wing walking is a thing that comes from the 1920s when we had biplanes and there would be air shows and they would go from town to town and do these crazy aerobatics. And one of the things they did is they'd have people walk on the wing of a flying plane. And they would do it like they would jump from wing to wing, these people from a flying plane or from a car to a flying plane. Yeah. So we don't do it anymore for obvious reasons. But there is one place in the United States that teaches it. And since I was sent a video of this gray-haired woman flying in a plane, suddenly standing up in the middle of a flight and clambering onto the wing of this biplane. And I had to talk to her. And so I called her, and she was 71. And she said, Caroline, you wouldn't believe the courage it takes to get up on the wing in that moment. And I thought, okay, well, I have to go write about that courage. I got it. That's amazing. We need courage. So I went and I took wing walking lessons at the same place she did. And I have to say that I was very surly about it. I was reluctant. I don't want to get out of a cockpit of a perfectly, I was not happy about it, but I was doing it for the book and I wanted to feel this courage. I went and did the class in the morning, and then when it came time for me to actually do the wing walking, which we had basically practiced on the ground, just up and down, at 3,000 feet in the air, the pilot waggles the wings and I get up and I get up on the wing, which, by the way, wing walking is not walking. It is crawling, slithering, praying. It's like you're at 3,000 feet. And I get myself to the king post finally, and I strap myself in, and I'm still like, what is this? I didn't feel that courage. I just felt, uh, abject horror at the wind. I hadn't thought like how different it was going to be up there. And then I strap myself in, and the pilot begins to do loops, barrel rolls, and hammerheads. And I went from being pretty bad tempered about this to ecstatic. And really just my mind, I couldn't even really take it in. And afterwards on the ground, I thought, that wasn't adrenaline. I mean, it was adrenaline too, but what was that? And I did research, and it turned out what I'd been feeling was awe. Textbook awe. And awe they've done studies on, but turns out awe is really important for us as humans. And so what awe is, can I just quickly say,
Please
is
do.
it's the feeling of like wonder, fear, dread, that in the presence of something bigger than you, more mysterious. So it's usually associated with religions. And the reason it's good is because it puts you in your real place in the world. See, we live in a world of anti-awe devices where you're looking at your phone, so you're narrowing your focus, and you think you have power and control. And awe is exactly the opposite. And scientists call awe the reset button for the brain, because neurally, it allows you to be more open and soak things in and more just receptive, and you feel your interconnectedness with, and on so many. So they did a study. You do not have to wing walk to get awe. You're an example, right? You go outside and you just want to look closely at things. That's what these researchers here in San Francisco told people between 60 and 80. Hey, go on a walk, and simply look at things with fresh childlike eyes. They called them awe walks. They were trying to cultivate awe. So this is possible to cultivate awe. And then they had a control group who just walked like we always do, worrying, looking at their iPhone. And after 8 weeks, they saw that the inflammation, if it's high, it's a sign of ill health, went way down. Anxiety and depression, way down. And funnily enough, compassion and gratitude, way up in these awe walkers. It made such a difference in their lives. And it continued. It kept going for a while. So awe is important and really good for us. And it's so easily accessed in the outdoors, because nature is just naturally, look at a night sky, look at the Grand Canyon, or just look closely at a flower. So I realized that, awe is really the foundation of going outside. And it's so good for us. And just walk. Don't wing walk. I don't recommend no, it's amazing, but you don't have to wing walk.
Did you, just very practically speaking, so you do get up on that wing, right? I don't understand how the physics of this can work at all.